You don't struggle with articles because you forgot the rules. You struggle because the rules are not the whole story. First mention a, second mention the, plurals in general, no article. You know that, but at advanced level, articles aren't usually about basic grammar rules anymore. They're about how you're seeing the noun in your mind. Before you choose an article, ask yourself, am I speaking generally or specifically? Am I talking about a concept or one example? Can the listener identify what I mean? Once you start thinking this way, articles stop feeling random. Let's start with something that looks simple, but isn't. Things in general. Look at these 3 sentences. Children need love. A child needs love. The child needs love. All 3 can refer to children in general, but they do it in different ways. Let's start by looking at the plural form, which is usually the most natural. Children need love. This is the most common way to talk about things generally. Teachers are under pressure. Teenagers are glued to their smartphones. If you're glued to something, it's permanently attached to you. You can't put it down. Smartphones are ubiquitous. Lovely adjective here. If something is ubiquitous, it is found everywhere. So this is what you'll hear most often in everyday conversation. Now let's take a look at a plus the singular form, which is used to talk about one typical example. This is common in explanations, definitions, advice, and presentations. A child needs love. If you take any typical child, that is true. A good leader listens carefully. This is the definition of a good leader. A healthy diet includes vegetables. We're explaining what a healthy diet is. A triangle has 3 sides. So again, this is an explanation or a definition. One typical example of a triangle. Now let's take a look at the plus singular, which we use when we're talking about the category as a whole. This is common in academic writing, news reports, economics, and policy discussions, so it tends to have a more formal feel to it. The child needs love. Children as a concept. The consumer is becoming more cautious. The consumer as a concept, as a class. The smartphone has reshaped social interaction. So I'm not talking about, one typical example of a smartphone, but the category as a whole. The lion is a highly efficient hunter. So again, the lion as a category, as a class. So let's just quickly review all 3. Children need love. This is what we'll see in most everyday situations. A child needs love. One typical example, common in explanations or definitions. The child needs love. The category as a whole, academic, news, it's more kind of formal and scientific. So this is about how you're viewing the noun, how you want your listener to understand it. Now we're going to take a look at an area that many advanced learners are unsure about, and that is a versus 1. You've probably been told that a equals 1. That's helpful, but it's not the whole story. Let's look at how we use a for number and quantity expressions. Once a week, in half an hour, £5 a week, 50p a kilo. In this case, a equals per, not 1. We would never say once 1 week or in half 1 hour. These examples illustrate how a is not simply the number one. There's more to it. Let's look at how we use it to introduce something or someone. I fancy a coffee. 1 cup of coffee, any coffee. So we're not focusing on the number here. You're not counting. I saw a firefighter. I need a break. We need to schedule a meeting. He's a friend of my parents. You're introducing someone or something new. The number is not important. My focus is not on the fact that I saw one firefighter, just that I'm introducing something new, the fact that I saw a firefighter, any firefighter. Let's compare this with when we use one. The number matters. It's often used when there's a choice or for emphasis or correction. I'd like 1 egg and 2 sausages. So not 2 eggs, not 3, just 1. You can stress it. You can say, I'd like 1 egg, whereas you probably wouldn't say, I'd like an egg. Okay, so that's a simple way that you can tell whether you should use a, an, or 1. Would you naturally emphasize it? Imagine a scenario, you're in a restaurant and the waiter says, was that 2 eggs? No, 1 egg and 2 sausages. So here you're emphasizing or making a correction. The number matters. Now, let's look at some cases where both are possible, but the meaning changes. He's going traveling for a year. He's going traveling for 1 year. Which of these options feels more precise and exact to you? The second one. 1 sounds more specific. 1 year, not 2 years, not 1 year and 1 month, whereas he's going traveling for a year sounds less precise. Maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. So 1 here can sound more specific. Maybe the timing matters. Maybe you're playing a game and you want the person to wait for exactly 1 minute. Or cooking. In baking, timing is important and you need to be precise. Wait exactly 1 minute, not 2 minutes, not 1 minute and 30 seconds. And it can even sound annoyed. Wait 1 minute. So this is about tone, not grammar. It's about how you're thinking about the situation. Now let's take a look at concept versus 1 example. And this relates to how meaning changes when a noun becomes countable. I don't drink coffee. The drink in general. Coffee as a concept. Uncountable. But would you like a coffee? 1 cup. Countable. So we can use this in the plural form. I've drunk 2 coffees this morning. There are many nouns that are used in this way. Fear is normal. Fear in general. Uncountable. I have a fear of spiders. 1 fear. Countable. Try to face your fears. So, plural here. That's true, I do have a fear of spiders. I've tried to face it many times with 0 success, unfortunately. It's one of the many reasons that I no longer live in England, because we get these huge, scary house spiders. I mean, they can be absolutely massive, like the palm of my hand, and they move so fast. And I know they're not poisonous, they're not going to hurt me, but that's the nature of phobia, isn't it? It's not rational. So here in Spain, we don't get those. We do get cockroaches, not in this flat, fortunately, but I have had to deal with them in the past. And although I find them gross and disgusting, they don't fill me with horror in the same way that spiders do. So, yeah. Let's see another example. Life is unpredictable. Life in general. life as a concept. I would never take a life. One life, countable. Cats are said to have 9 lives, plural. So this is what we say in English culture, that cats have 9 lives. How many lives are cats said to have in your culture? And just a point about this structure, cats are said to have. This is the impersonal passive. I recently did a video about this, so if you're interested, be sure to check it out. Pop the link in the description. In fact, I'll pop the link to my advanced grammar playlist in the description so you can check that out. Experience is important. Experience in general, uncountable. And here we're talking about knowledge or skill that you gain. It was an unforgettable experience. One experience, countable. A specific event that happens to you. And she's had some bad experiences with online dating. My friends that made me think of this example. So we've got the plural form. And I've included this because I wanted to point out that we say have, not live an experience. So I know in many other languages you would say to live an experience, but in English we say have. Now we're going to look at what I think is actually the most important point about article use, and that is the use of the when something is identifiable, because thinking in this way actually encompasses quite a number of so-called rules. So it solves a lot of the problems that people have with article use. So by identifiable, we mean the listener can identify what we mean. Where there is only one. The government are reviewing the policy. Now, I'm British, so I say the government are. In North American English, people tend to think of the government as one entity, and they would say the government is. Whereas the British, we often think of collective nouns like government and family as being plural, encompassing many members. So I have a live stream on that topic for members. If you're interested in membership, you can check that out. The information is in the description. Please pass me the salt. Close the door. You may be thinking, but there's more than one government in the world. There's lots of salt, and there's certainly more than one door. But the point here is that even if many exist in the world, only one is relevant right now. So if I say the government are reviewing the policy, I'm probably talking about the government, my government, the government of the country where I live. The salt, please pass me the salt. We're sitting at the table. There's one pot of salt on the table. Close the door. The door to this room. And if a room has more than one door, then again, it's still usually clear from the context. If someone's just entered the room, we might say, well, close the door that you just came through. So, yep, the only one that is relevant right now. Let's compare this with only one as a single shared reality. The sky is blue. The future is difficult to predict. So these things, we conceptualize as there being only one that we all share. Like the sun, the moon, the world, the environment as well. There are many. And it's often the case with these that we can use a when referring to one possible version of something that is normally conceptualized as singular. So, for example, the painting shows a cornfield under a beautiful blue sky. So that's one version of a sky that has been imagined by the painter. We dream of a brighter future, one possible future that we're imagining. So this comes down to how we're viewing the noun in our mind. Are we thinking of the one shared reality, or are we thinking about one possible version of that in our imagination? Now we're going to look at repetition. So this is another way that a noun becomes identifiable. I bought a book. The book was interesting. Now, in this case, it's often more natural to use a pronoun to avoid sounding repetitive. So we'd probably just say, I bought a book. It was interesting. But this rule is still relevant. I bought a book and a magazine. The magazine was interesting, but the book was disappointing. So here we wouldn't use a pronoun because it would confuse the issue. If you said, I bought a book and a magazine, it was interesting, but it was disappointing, what does it refer to? So sometimes we do need to repeat the noun. I bought a book last week. I'd been looking for something by the author for months. I finally found a copy in a small bookshop near the station. The book turned out to be extraordinary. Sometimes this happens. You don't mention the noun again till later in your paragraph. And in this case, you may well want to repeat it for clarity. Now let's look at adjectives. So this is another way that a noun becomes identifiable. Could you pass me the blue pen? So blue is an adjective that defines the pen. And in this case, we need to use the, because we know which pen we're talking about. Not just any pen, the blue pen. She works in the travel industry. Travel here serves as an adjective that defines which industry we're talking about. It's identifiable, so we use the. And this brings us to defining adjective clauses or relative clauses. So again, these make something identifiable. They tell us which one of something we're talking about. The film I watched last night was very long. So, which film? The one I watched last night. It's identifiable, so we must use the. I'll never forget the day we met. Which day? The day we met. Identifiable, so we have to say the day. Let's take a closer look at the defining adjective clause. So, education is important. Here we're talking about education in general. We're not defining it, so we don't use any article. But the education she received was excellent. So here we're being specific. Which education? The education she received. Love is a powerful emotion. Love in general, no article. The love I feel for my family is immeasurable. So both of these nouns, education and love, are abstract. We can't touch them. We can't put them in a box. But they can still be used with articles. Sometimes people think abstract nouns, we don't use them with articles. That's not true. We do if we are defining them, if we're being specific, if they are identifiable. For more on defining, adjective clauses, relative clauses in general, check out my video on reducing them. It's in the Advanced Grammar playlist, which you'll find in the description. Now let's look at something that is really important for those of you who do any kind of formal writing, because this pops up a lot. With a defining of phrase, the start of the play was the best part. So if a noun is followed by of the something, it's being defined. It's telling us which noun we're talking about. What start? The start of the play. Paris is the capital of France. Of France. This defines which capital we're talking about. The development of technology has accelerated. Which development? of technology. The impact of the policy was significant. Which impact? Of the policy. He is the King of England. Which king are we talking about? The King of England. Now, this brings me to proper names that take the, and there's a simple rule, which again, it comes down to whether it is identifiable or not. If it's really a description, it usually takes the. The United Kingdom. It's a kingdom. Okay, so which kingdom? The United one. The Thames. The River Thames. Which river? The Thames. The Alps. Here, the Alps, it describes mountains. The Netherlands. Lowlands. So which lands are we talking about? The Netherlands. The Philippines. Islands. You see this, with island groups. The Maldives, the Canary Islands, the Seychelles. And the name, it's like a description. It defines which group of islands, or identifies which group of islands we're talking about. The Dominican Republic. It's a republic. Which republic? The Dominican Republic. The Pacific Ocean. An ocean. Which ocean? The Pacific Ocean. In all of these cases, these behave like descriptive phrases, not simple names. So let's compare these with proper names that don't take the. Most countries, simple names. Spain, Brazil, Japan, India. It's not a descriptive phrase, it's just a simple name. This also applies when the descriptive noun comes first and is part of the name. And this is the case with mountains and lakes. Mount Everest, Mount Fuji. So we don't say the Everest Mountain, for example. Mount Everest is the name. Lake Michigan, Lake Titicaca. We don't just say the Michigan. I think it would be confusing. Like, are we talking about Michigan State? So lake is part of the name. Unlike with rivers, like we do say the Amazon and the Thames, and that makes perfect sense. So river is not necessarily part of the name. We're going to finish up with a subject that is a source of great confusion to learners, and that is institutions. So we're going to start specifically by looking at hospital, because this one has a regional difference. Now, when we look at an institution in terms of its purpose, so for example, attending classes, a service, or serving a sentence, and in the case of a hospital, that means being admitted as a patient, staying or receiving treatment. In other words, being an inpatient. Here, we say she's in hospital in the UK, but she's in the hospital in the USA. So in the UK, there's no article, while in the US, there is. And if we look at the institution as a physical location, so working, visiting, simply being nearby, or maybe having a brief appointment. In the case of the hospital, if you have a brief appointment, you are an outpatient. And in this case, we say she's at the hospital. And this is typical in both the UK and the USA. And so it's the preposition that changes, actually. She's at, and we use the. So the for the physical location. Let's take a look at some other institutions: university, school, church, and prison. So again, institution as a purpose, attending a service, a class, or serving a sentence. He's at university in Bristol. He's a student there. They're at church. They're attending a service. She's in prison. She's serving a sentence, or doing time, which is an informal way to say serving a prison sentence. So here, there's no article. The institution as a physical location, so working, visiting, or being nearby. She works at the university. He's taking photos at the church. The criminology students are visiting the prison. In these cases, we're not treating the institution, in terms of its purpose. I'm not there as a student or attending a service, and I'm not in prison serving a sentence. We're just talking about being in the physical location. Okay, so let's just quickly recap. No article, general meaning or institutional purpose. A or an, one instance, one version, or classification. And the, identifiable. This is the kind of the biggest thing to remember. Unique, limited, previously mentioned, shared, or referring to a whole class. So you can see from all this that at advanced level, articles aren't about memorizing rules. They're about meaning. They don't change the noun, but they change how your listener understands it. So let's go back to those 3 questions. Ask yourself, am I speaking generally or specifically? Am I talking about a concept or one example? And perhaps most importantly, can the listener identify what I mean? And once you think like this, article choice becomes logical, not random. Well done, guys. If you enjoyed that lesson, if you learned something, then please do give it a like. It really does help the channel. And why not subscribe for more? And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And drop me a comment and let me know what you thought, or if you have any questions. And I just want to say a massive thank you to my channel members for supporting the channel. See you in the next video.